Hello, everyone. I am just slowly admitting everybody in. Ooh, amazing. Hi, everybody. Just 3 people in the waiting room that I'm letting in. Welcome to our first workshop of the year. We're incredibly excited to be kicking off our 2025 program with this very special and I think very, very important topic and workshop that I think a lot of people in our network have been waiting for. Just before we get started, I am just going to give us a few seconds to allow everybody to make their way in from the waiting room. We always have a couple of stragglers who take a few minutes to jump on. In the meantime, while we wait, my name is Nahil. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Form, and I will be moderating or chairing today's workshop, so to speak. And we have our speaker with us, Veronique Lecat from the American University of Sharjah. You can see her waving at us from her office. While we're waiting for everyone, I do encourage everybody to introduce themselves on the chat. Let us know who you are, where you come from, which organization you're a part of, and if there's the time and you have the will, also letting us know why you're interested in being part of today's workshop. I'm going to give us maybe a few more seconds and then we'll get started. Hello, everybody. Hello, Farshid. Hello, Salim. Thank you for joining us. I see that you've written to us in the chat. Okay, so I think we'll just get started. As people come in, I'll just let them in from the waiting room. So welcome to Creative Commons Uncovered, a guide for academic librarians. As I mentioned earlier, it's our first workshop of 2025. We're very excited to have you all join us for the top of the year. We will first, before we start the workshop, just run through a few housekeeping points. So if we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So first of all, this is a meeting format on Zoom, which therefore means you can, in theory, turn on your cameras and your mics. This is to encourage interactivity between our network. However, out of respect for our speaker, we do ask that everybody please keep your cameras and your mics off, unless otherwise suggested or requested by the speaker, so that we also don't distract her and we give her the opportunity to actually educate us in a way that is smooth and clear. And then if you get encouraged to turn it on, please do. We do love to hear from you guys and we love to hear your thoughts and actually get to see you, which is always wonderful. We have the raise hand feature that we use to alert myself or the speaker if we're talking too fast. We do appreciate that a lot of our network are bilingual and that English might not be their first language. So if at any point you do feel like we're rushing through things, just use the raise hand feature and it'll be our alert to slow down. Again, since it's a meeting, we are only going to have chat for this event. There is no Q&A box. So do please use the chat feature if you have any technical issues, if you need to reach out to me or any of our technical staff in the back. We have Alona with us today from the team who's supporting in tech, but also do share your comments, your thoughts, your ideas, and any questions that you have for our speaker on the chat so that we can then have a fruitful discussion if there's time. And finally, this is a standard housekeeping slide. However, we won't be having polls for this event. What we will be having are quizzes. Veronique, our speaker, will be sharing a QR code on the screen, as well as a link on, we'll be sharing a link on the chat so that you can participate in the quiz as we go through. And yes, there will be a certificate. I'm seeing a question already popping up in the chat. So for the next slide, just really quickly before we jump off, for anyone who doesn't know, this is an event hosted by the Forum for Open Research in MENA in partnership with Veronique Lecat from the American University of Sharjah. For any new faces or any new names here today, we're a nonprofit membership organization that supports the advancement of open science policies and practices in research communities and institutions across the Arab region. We do this through 4 pillars, which include supporting the advancement of open science within higher education institutions and research communities. We also create accessible and localized resources relating to open science policies and practices. We encourage community partnerships and collaboration. So these events are a big example of that. And hopefully in the future, we hope to be able to champion right to left functionality in open source and open science technical solutions. And a little bit more about our activities. So if we move on to the next slide. We have 3 main forms of activities that we do. We have the CDAs, so such as today's example or today's event. We have workshops, webinars, symposiums, working groups, a variety of little community activities that we do to encourage capacity building and collaboration. We also have the annual forum, which is our yearly conference that we host in a different Arab country every year, or that's the goal. Depending on availabilities. And finally, our resources, which, as I mentioned, include developing guidance resources. And also we have tentatively launched our own open access journal, Al Wusul, and we're hoping to be pushing for that very soon in terms of letting everyone know about our call to action. So without further ado, I will pass the torch on to our speaker for the day, Veronique Lecat, who's going to be running us through the remainder of the workshop. Welcome, Veronique. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nahil. So I'm just going to start presenting. Let's see here. Okay. Just let me know that you can see this first slide.
We're all clear here.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And welcome to this session on Creative Commons Uncovered, a guide for academic librarians. I'd like to start by asking you all a question. Have you ever come across these? So imagine you come across an ebook, an article, video, or image with one of these symbols or logos. What do they mean? Now, you've probably seen them before. These are Creative Commons licenses. And as academic librarians, you may already recognize them, but do you know how they actually work and what they allow or restrict? So in this workshop, I'd like to delve into those details. About me, my name is Veronique Lecat. I am the cataloging and metadata librarian at the American University of Sharjah. If you have any questions for me, my email is vlecat@aus.edu. And part of my role here at AUS is leading our copyright team. And I've been here for 10 years. So over that time, we've gotten quite a few questions from our faculty and staff about which Creative Commons license they should apply to their OA article, or they find an article with a CC license on it and they're wondering if they can post it online for their students. So we've gotten quite a few questions about that. And that inspired me to register for this CC certificate for academic librarians. So this is why I'm hosting this workshop, is because I have this expertise due to taking this Creative Commons certificate program. It was a 10-week online asynchronous course that is offered by Creative Commons. The tuition was $500 US. I'm very thankful to Amical's Elisabetta Morani library staff grant, who covered the cost of my tuition. And in this course, we were asked to do assignments, and I really liked the fact that they were flexible assignments. So you could do any kind of work you want. You could create a LibGuide, do an infographic, a podcast, a video, whatever would be useful to you. And the course required us to license our assignments with Creative Commons licenses, so we could immediately put them to use in our own institutions if we'd like. At the end of the course, you earn a certificate badge, which you can post on LinkedIn. So that's what I have the image here of my LinkedIn with my Badger badge. And if you are interested in taking this course, and I do encourage people who are interested in learning more about Creative Commons to take this course, I have the URL there, and I believe someone will post that link in the chat. So the agenda for the workshop today, I've put it into 3 parts. The first part will be covering the basics. What is copyright? What is Creative Commons? And what is the purpose of CC licenses? Then we're going to really delve into the licenses, the 4 elements, attribution, share alike, non-commercial, and no derivatives, and how those combine to create the 6 CC licenses. I will also talk a bit about the 2 public domain tools that Creative Commons offers, and talk about other considerations when choosing a license. In the final part, we're going to put that into practice. I'm going to do a demonstration of the license chooser and how to apply a license to your work, talk about how to find CC licensed work, and talk about things to think about when making adaptations or remixing CC licensed work. At the end of each part, I'm going to do a short quiz. So we'll share a link in the chat. It's just a 3-question quiz just to see if you're paying attention to me. So let's start by talking about what is copyright. Copyright are laws that determine how people can use and access original works. They protect the creator's moral and economic rights. By moral rights, I mean it's the integrity of one's work, one's reputation, so having some control over the work you've created. And economic rights refers to the person's right to earn a living, to earn an income with the work they've created. So copyright is protecting those. And copyright applies to all types of works. It could be the written word, music, artwork, drama, audiovisual, films, etc., adaptations, and even things like databases and software. But it's important to note that copyright does not cover facts. A fact is a fact. No one can have copyright over that. You can have copyright over the expression of a fact if I state it in a certain way, or I do a drawing of the fact to explain it. Yes, I can copyright that, but the fact itself, you cannot copyright that. It's important to note also that copyright is automatically granted. And over the years, we've gotten questions from faculty about how do I copyright my work? Do I have to put a little, copyright symbol at the bottom of my article? Do I need to register it with an organization? No. Copyright is automatically granted. There's no registration required. So for example, if I were to write down a story right now, so I've come up with a story, I've put it pen to paper, I've written it down, I have copyright over that, which means that no one can take that story and post it online, publish it in a book, or translate it without first asking me for permission. Now, in some countries, they do have registration offices available, but that's just an extra step you can take. It's not required. You would still have copyright over your work regardless. Okay. Now, things get slightly more complex when we look at copyright law in the global context. Copyright laws vary from country to country. So for example, here I'm in the United Arab Emirates, and our copyright is described in Federal Decree Law number 38 of 2021 on copyrights and neighboring rights. So obviously each country is going to have their own laws describing their rights. But one thing that ties most countries together is the Berne Convention. The Berne Convention is a global copyright agreement. There are 181 signatory states, and you can see in the map here, all of the blue area are members of the Berne Convention. So most of the world is a member, including United States and the UAE. In the Berne Convention, there's 3 important elements to keep in mind. So the first one is that it sets guaranteed minimum standards. So one of these standards is that copyright protections must cover at least the length of the author's life plus 50 additional years. So that's the length of copyright at a minimum. Now, in some countries, they lengthen that. So in the United States, it's plus 70 years. In Mexico, and I think Mexico is the longest, is author's life plus 100 years. Here in the UAE, it's plus 50 years. But that is the minimum standard. The second element is national treatment, which means that each country has to give foreigners protections that are no less favorable than the protections granted to its own people. So to give you an example, if an American distributes their book in Mexico, Mexico will copyright protect that work for the length of the author's life plus 100 years, just as they would do for Mexican citizens. And the third element is territoriality, which means that a country can only enforce laws within its own borders. They cannot enforce laws outside of their borders. And because of this, in a world where people from many different countries collaborate together on projects, it starts to become complicated to know which countries' laws apply. You know, if I'm working with someone from the United States, do I need to think about United States laws, UAE laws? And that is one of the big benefits of using Creative Commons licenses, is if it has a Creative Commons license, you know exactly how that work can be used everywhere. Another really important concept in copyright is the fact that it expires. It does not last forever. So we talked about that minimum standard of the author's life plus 50 years. And at the end of that period, a work will enter what is known as the public domain. And that at that point, the work can be used freely by anyone without asking for permission from the copyright owner. And the reason this is important is that it ensures a balance. So you want this balance between the creator's rights, their moral and economic rights to their work, but on the other hand, is the public good. It's important that eventually a work belongs to the public, where it can foster invention, creativity, and progress. And I try to think, when I'm thinking about this, I think about a world where Shakespeare's plays. Imagine Shakespeare's plays were still protected by copyright, and no one could do an adaptation of them, make a film, do a stage production of them without asking the copyright owner for permission. That would be a real hindrance to creativity and innovation in the world. So we want to ensure that we have that balance. So now that we understand the basics of copyright law, we can look into the birth of Creative Commons. The first thing that happened that inspired Creative Commons to exist was the internet. And with the internet, you have people sharing their work. They're uploading their photos, they're posting blogs, they're sharing their artwork and music. And keep in mind that the default in copyright is all rights reserved. So if someone wanted to take your photo and reshare it on a different website, or take your music and make a remix of it, they'd have to ask the copyright owner for permission first. And that's not the most efficient way to do it. What CC licenses allow creators to do is to communicate with the public how they're allowing their works to be shared, and to automatically grant them rights. The second thing that inspired the birth of Creative Commons happened in 1998, and that is called the Copyright Term Extension Act, the CTEA, and that was passed in the United States. It extended US copyright protections by a further 20 years. So before that time, copyright covered the length of the author's life plus 50 years, and after CTEA passed, it was plus 70 years. Some people call this act the Mickey Mouse Protection Act because one of the big lobbying forces behind it was the Walt Disney Corporation, who were trying to protect their own IP from going into the public domain. So in 1999, a Stanford law professor named Lawrence Lessig represented web publisher Eric Eldred in a Supreme Court case where they argued that the CTEA was unconstitutional. They believed that it was disturbing that balance between the creator's rights and the public good. Unfortunately, they did lose that case, but it did inspire them to found Creative Commons, and that happened in 2002. So that's 23 years ago. So Creative Commons is more than just the licenses. It's a nonprofit organization that advocates for copyright reform and open access policies. They do educational programs, Clearly, I took one of their courses. And Creative Commons licenses, they not only enable people to share their works and automatically grant rights, but it's also a signal of values. If you put a Creative Commons license on your work, you're signaling a value of openness, of sharing, of collaboration, and you're contributing to a commons of works that everyone can access and use. And according to Creative Commons, there are over 2.5 billion CC licensed works published. And you can find them everywhere online, including Wikipedia, on museums like the Museum of Modern Art. You'll find them on open access books and journals, as well as platforms like YouTube, Vimeo, and Flickr. So now that we've covered the basics and we understand what copyright is, what is Creative Commons, and what is the purpose of CC licenses, I'd invite you to do the first quiz, and I think we'll share the link in the chat, and I will leave you 3 or 4 minutes to do that. It's just 3 questions, and we'll return for the next part. Just wait 2 more minutes for everyone to give the quiz a try. Okay, I hope everyone had a chance to look at the quiz and that you did well. Once you submit your answers, if you click on view score, I believe, you can see what the correct answers were. So with that, I'm gonna keep going onto the next part of the workshop, which is where we delve into the CC licenses. So there are 4 elements to a CC license, and each of these elements has a full name, it has an icon, and it has a 2-letter abbreviation. The first element is attribution, by. Second is non-commercial, NC. Then we have share alike, SA. And finally, no derivatives, ND. And it's really good to know the name, abbreviation, and icon because you may only see one of these mentioned on a license. So for example, I took this from a Vimeo video and it only showed the icons. And then I found this open access article and its license just had those 2-letter abbreviations. Then I found another open access article from MDPI, and it showed all 3. You see the icon, you see the full name. It says Creative Commons Attribution, the full name, CC BY license. Now, I will note that all 3 of these link to the license. So if you click on them, it will take you to a human readable license deed that looks like this. So you can see exactly what you are free to do and under what terms. So let's go into these 4 elements. The first element, attribution, is one you're going to find on all the CC licenses. It requires users to give credit to the creator of a work. When giving attribution to a work, the best practice recommended by Creative Commons is to follow TASL, which stands for title, author, source, and license. Let me give you an example. So I found this picture of the beautiful blue souk in Sharjah. I found this on Flickr. So to give correct attribution, I must include the title. So this photo's title is just Sharjah. The author, so it's by Chu with a heart. So that's how it was on Flickr. The source, so I'm putting the URL where I got it from. And then the license. So title, author, source, and license, voila, we have our attribution. So that's a bare minimum to include when you're giving attribution to a CC licensed work. You're welcome to give more information as well as the date if you'd like, but this is the minimum. The second element, share alike, requires users to apply the same license to any derivatives or adaptations they make. And this is a way of ensuring that any adapted content will remain open. Now that sounds good, and it is good. I just want to note that it can be restrictive. So if someone were to make a derivative or use a work in a remix, they're going to be limited in what license they can apply to the end product because it starts with a share alike license, and that may limit interest. Okay, what I just said is a bit confusing, but I have an example. So let's say we have a faculty member and they want to make a new open access textbook about calculus. And they've gone online, they went on the open textbook library and they found 2 calculus textbooks that they really like. And the first one is licensed with an attribution non-commercial share alike license. And the second one is licensed under attribution share alike. And what this faculty member is planning to do is to take a bit from textbook 1, a bit from textbook 2. They're going to put it in a new order, add some of their own original work. Perhaps they're even going to translate it into Arabic. So essentially, they're creating what's called a remix. Unfortunately, in this case, they can't do it. Because each of these textbooks licenses has a share alike element and they don't match each other, you can't do it. If that textbook he was creating was licensed under a attribution share alike license, it would be in violation of the attribution non-commercial share alike license. And if they licensed it under a attribution non-commercial share alike license, that would be in violation of the second textbook's share alike attribution share alike license. So that share alike clause is making it impossible to do a remix of these 2 textbooks together. I hope that makes some sense. The third element, non-commercial, means that users cannot use the content to make money. And this is defined by the nature of their reuse, not by who is reusing it. So by that I mean, let's say a nonprofit organization is reusing the content, but perhaps they're using the content in a way that is to make money. That could be interpreted as commercial use. So it's not the nature of the organization, it's the type of use. And there's a good side to that, which means that people cannot commercialize your work without first asking you for permission. But on the negative side, it can also be restrictive, especially since commercial has different definitions. One thing I learned that really surprised me during the course was that in parts of Europe, they consider using materials in tuition-based courses for educational purposes as commercial use, because for them, tuition-based institutions are commercial institutions, I guess. And I put the source of where I got that information from. So yes, just keep in mind that it can be restrictive in different regions. Now, the last element, no derivatives, is the most restrictive attribute. It restricts users from making adaptations or remixes. And what's considered an adaptation will depend on local law. But what it would include, so things that a no derivatives element would be preventing you from doing is translating the work into another language, taking a graphic and recoloring it, adapting a novel into a film, syncing a video with a song, or making a remix, which is combining two works to make something entirely new. What you still can do in most countries would be to fix minor spelling and grammar mistakes in the work, to change the format. So if you had an open access article that you found online and just wanted to print it, that's not an adaptation, or to include it in a collection. So where each item is still disparate and it still remains in its original form. And that's because those types of modifications do not rise to the level of an adaptation. These four elements combine to create the 6 different Creative Commons licenses, which I'm showing here from least restrictive to the most restrictive. So these are attribution, attribution share alike, attribution non-commercial, attribution non-commercial share alike, attribution no derivatives, attribution non-commercial no derivatives. So notice again, they all have attribution as part of them, and the 2 most restrictive are saying you cannot make derivatives. About the licenses, they are written to work within existing global copyright laws. So the licenses only give people permission to do things. They never take your rights away. So if in your country you have fair use laws, those are always still going to apply. If your country is a signatory of the Marrakesh VIP Treaty, which enables people to make accessible versions, like translating something into Braille so that a visually impaired person can access that work, they can still do that regardless, okay? Another thing is that these licenses, they were drafted by lawyers and they have been enforced in court cases. However, during the course, I learned that disagreements are usually settled out of court. The licenses have a 3-layer structure. So the one that we're most familiar with is the human readable deed. So that's where the canonical URL, when you click on that license, is going to go to this, where you can see in plain text what the license means, what you can do with it. The base layer of the license is the full legal code. So this is written in legalese. It's going to be harder to understand. It's a lot longer. But if the license happened to come up in a court case, this is what the lawyers would be working with. And finally, the layer that we don't see very often is the machine readable layer. This is what enables search engines and applications to understand what you can and cannot do with the licensed material. And that is written in a language called CC-REL, the Creative Commons Rights Expression Language. In addition to the 6 licenses, Creative Commons offers 2 public domain tools. So these are not licenses, they're just tools. And they are a bit similar, but a bit different. So the first one is called CC0, and that is a tool for creators to give up their copyrights completely and dedicate their work to the public domain, where people can use or adapt the work with no conditions at all. You don't even have to give attribution. So if I have a photograph that I've taken, I'm just like, I just want to give it to the world. You don't have to cite me. You can just use it, adapt it, stick it on a shower curtain and sell that on an Etsy shop. I can put that in the public domain and people can do what they like. The second one is called the public domain mark, and that is used to identify existing works that are known to be free of all copyright restrictions. So if I have an archive with these old books that were written hundreds of years ago, and I'm posting them, digitized versions of them online, I know that they're in the public domain. I know that the writers have passed away a very long time ago. I will just indicate on my website this is in the public domain using that mark. Some considerations when you're applying a license is that they're non-revocable, which is a little bit scary. So if you were to publish a blog post online and you published it and you put it under the least restrictive license, the Creative Commons Attribution license, and then you say, oh my goodness, I actually changed my mind. I actually want to post this with a Creative Commons Attribution non-commercial license. Well, it's a little bit too late. What you can do is unpublish your blog post and then republish it with the new license. And then anyone accessing that new copy of your blog post would see the new license. However, if someone happened to access the original work where you put the original license on, it's still applicable. Okay, it's non-revocable. The other consideration has to do with the Budapest Open Access Initiative, BOAI, which recommends Creative Commons attribution. And I find this interesting because before I took the course, when I was looking at these licenses, I always thought Creative Commons attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives, which is the most restrictive license. I always thought of that as the safest option because, you know, I don't want people to use it for commercial purposes. I don't want people to make an adaptation without asking me first. So I kind of thought of that as the default. But knowing what I know now, I think of CC attribution as the default, the least restrictive license. BOAI recommends CC BY or an equivalent license as the optimal license for the publication, distribution, use, and reuse of scholarly work. So I encourage you to start there, think of that as your default, and then really consider if you need share-alike, non-commercial, or no derivatives added to the license if needed. So that's just my personal recommendation and something for you to think about. So now that you understand the anatomy of a CC license, the 4 elements, how they combine to create the 6 licenses, how they differ in restrictiveness, how they work within existing copyright laws, that 3-layer structure, as well as the public domain tools, I invite you to do the second quiz. And again, we're going to post that link in the chat. And I will give you, let's say, 4 minutes to finish that. And we'll go on to the final part. All right, let's just wait 1 more minute and then we'll move on. Well, I hope everyone did well on the quiz. And again, you can click on view score, I think, to see the correct answers if you did make any mistakes. So with that, we understand the history of copyright and the structure of the licenses, and we can start to put this into practice. And so for this, I'm going to attempt to do a demonstration of adding a CC license to my own work. So let me, okay. So what I'm going to use, the tool I'm going to use to do this is called the license chooser. You can find it, there's a link we'll share in the chat. If you just Google Creative Commons license chooser. Nope. It would be the first link over here. So this is a really useful tool. And you can point faculty and staff to this tool if they want to see what license they want to use. So what I have here is a story I've written, although I didn't really write it. I had ChatGPT write it, but let's just pretend that I wrote it, called From Stray to Stay. And this is about my cat, Milo. Oh, there's Milo. He's so cute. So he's a cat I rescued. He was just a tomcat that lived near my apartment building. Okay. So I have this story and I want to license it with a Creative Commons license. So what I'm going to do is go to the license chooser and just go through the questions. It's pretty simple. I'll just make this a little bigger. Okay. Question 1, do I know which license I need? So if I know all about Creative Commons licenses, maybe I can select this. But in this case, I'm going to say, no, I need help selecting a license. Let's go to the next one. Do you want attribution for your work? Now, in most cases, you're going to say, yes, they must cite me. Anyone using my work must include proper attribution. If you were to select no, you would be committing your work to the public domain, and they'll be recommending this CC0 mark. So here I'm going to say, yes, I want attribution. Next, do you want to allow others to use your work commercially? So we've talked about that. You can say, yes, you can use my work even for commercial purposes. I don't think anyone's going to make any particular profit off this story. It's fine. Or no, they cannot. Let's go to the next. Do you want to allow others to remix, adapt, or build upon your work? And keep in mind that would include translating it, making their own version of it. So it would be really limiting if you prevent people from making derivatives of your work. So you have that option, but in this case, I'm going to say yes, you can remix, adapt, or build upon my work. The 5th question, do you want to allow others to share adaptations of your work under any terms? So this is referring to that share-alike element. So the less restrictive one is, yep, you can share adaptations of my work under any terms, or no, they have to apply the same CC license if they adapt my work. So I'm going to be very liberal here and just say, yep, you can share my adaptations under any terms. And then the 6th question is a little confirmation. So yes, I own or have authority to license the work. So if you're the author of the work, you would have that. Yes, I've understood and read the terms of the license. And yes, I understand that CC licenses are non-revocable, which we did talk about. And once you approve that, you have a license. And optionally, you can add some attribution details. So I can add the title of my story. I can put my name. If I publish the work online, I can add a link. I can add a link to my website, add a year of creation. And that all automatically gets placed into this rich text license. And you can choose either just the abbreviation or the full license name. And I'm going to copy that, go back to my Google document and just add that, or I think I've already done that, but yeah, Control V and just add that into the footer. And I think the one problem I noticed was that these images didn't carry over, but that's not so important because I do have the license mentioned here. in the abbreviated version, and it links to the deed, which is also very important. So as easy as that, I have made my work Creative Commons licensed. If I were publishing this work on a website, that's also very easy to do. So I've opened up a HTML editor and I've added my story in HTML code, the title and the text. And so what I want to do is just insert the license down here. And I just have to click on HTML, and it's going to give me that HTML code. Copy it. And I can just paste that. Let's see, it should, yeah. And that has been added to the bottom of my website here. So very, very straightforward. And okay, let me go back into presentation mode. Okay. Now, as for finding Creative Commons licensed works online, there's many places you can go to, and here I'm just going to mention a few of them. So the first one is Google Images. I think I need to exit presentation and just click on these links. So Google Images, let's go to that. You've probably used it before. So if I just do a search, I'm going to search for images of Sharjah, and I want to find CC licensed images. You just click on tools over there, and then there's a little drop down for usage rights, and you can see Creative Commons licenses. So all of these images are going to have Creative Commons licenses. And this one is on Wikimedia Commons. If I were to visit it, I think I would see the license here. Yeah, and you can see the license is there. This is under a CC attribution share-alike license. Now that we're an expert, we can understand this, these logos. So Google Images is a great place if you're looking for open access journals, CC licensed journals. There's the directory of open access journals. So again, I'm going to look up, I'm looking for journals related to astronomy, and it's going to tell me, like in this journal, the Astrophysical Journal Supplement Series, the author retains all rights, and they're using a CC attribution license. Okay, and it's telling me which licenses they apply to the articles published in these journals. The directory of open access books is another great resource. So again, I'm going to find, I'm just going to search for a book. Or I guess I can click on this one over here. There we go. So we've got this book, I think it's in German. And you can see here, it says a little bit vaguely, there, CC, some rights reserved. That doesn't tell me much, but that little logo does link, and it goes to the full license deed. And so this one is a Creative Commons attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives license. So this is the most restrictive license. If you're looking for open educational resources, like textbooks, a few good places to look are OER Commons. And I'm just mentioning the sites that are quite useful to use and mention CC licenses very obviously. So again, I'm going to look for astronomy. That's my default search here. Let's look for astronomy textbooks that are for college level. Let's just see what we find. And again, I really like that they tell you what CC license is on each of these books. Open Textbook Library, another great resource. And again, let me just open up one textbook they're mentioning, and this one is under an attribution, non-commercial share-alike license. And we have a LibGuide. Of course, we have a LibGuide here at AUS for open educational resources. So if that's something that's interesting to you or you think would be interesting to your faculty and staff, feel free to take a look at our LibGuide. Just to look at that, you can find open educational resources and open textbooks. We have a whole list of them here on this page. Okay. And so we are nearing the end. I have two slightly complicated looking charts. I'm going to go back into presenter view and talk about these. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So this is called the CC Adapters License Chart, and it tells you what kind of license you can apply to an adaptation. So if I were to take a novel and I wanted to adapt it into a play, for example, or do a translation of a work, and I want to put a CC license on that adaptation, it's a good idea to consult this chart. This chart is found on the Creative Commons website under their FAQ. When is my use considered an adaptation? And so how you use this chart is you look at the status of the original work. So let's say it is a SCC attribution non-commercial license. Then the squares that are green are the licenses that you are okay to use on your own work. If it's in yellow, it means that technically you can, but it's not recommended by Creative Commons. So in this case, technically you can put it into the public domain. You see PD is for public domain. I could put my work into the public domain, but it's a little bit iffy. And gray means no, you can't do that. So, obviously no derivatives, if it's an attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives, by definition, you can't make an adaptation because an adaptation is a derivative. So you just look at the status of the original work, and then you can see what kind of license you can apply to your adaptation. And the other example is the CC license compatibility chart, which is when you want to do a remix. A remix is when you're taking two CC licensed works and you're mixing them together. It's almost like a smoothie. You cannot distinguish the original elements from each other. You've made something entirely new. And that's where if they have different CC licenses on them, it's possible that you cannot do a remix of them. So this is where you look at your first example. So let's say it's a CC attribution share alike license. Yes, I can remix that with public domain stuff. Yes, I can, yeah, these are both public domain. I can remix it with attribution license. I can remix it with an attribution share alike license because that's the same, but I cannot remix it with the non-commercial license. And I can't remix it with obviously the no derivatives licenses. So you can see if your two things are going to work together. And again, I pulled this chart from the Creative Commons FAQ site. Because of course, So that is my last slide with information. I'm just going to give you about 3 minutes to do the last quiz. So I hope you were paying attention to those two complicated charts because those come up in the questions. And we'll come back in a couple minutes for questions. Or maybe, yeah, maybe I'll wait just 1 minute because we're 5-2. Okay, and I'll just mention my sources. There is a Creative Commons certificate open textbook that you can access. That's where I pulled most of my information from. I'll mention that I did license this presentation under a CC attribution license. I've made the presentation on Canva. And well, we have 5 minutes left, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Veronique. That was so insightful. I feel like I learned so much about Creative Commons, and I think you've made something that seemed so complicated and scary to me and maybe a lot of us really much simpler and much easier to follow. So we do have, as Veronique mentioned, we do have about 5 minutes left. If anyone has any questions that they want to put on the chat. In the meantime, Veronique, we are getting asked quite a bit if you would be comfortable with us sharing these slides later down the line. We could, yeah. So in that case, to anyone who's wondering on the chat, we will be circulating the slides once we figure out exactly how to do that. Just a few more minutes for anyone who wants to type up their questions. Or if you would want to, you know, speak out and let us know, maybe you could put your hand up and then we could let you know. If you can open up your mic and ask us a question. Yeah. So we have one hand up, so please, I've asked you to go ahead and unmute. Please go ahead and ask.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I am Gabra Amlak, or you can call me Gigi from Tigray, Ethiopia. So thank you for the enlightened and impressive topic. So I have two questions. The first question is, how can we determine the time of expire date of copyrights? And what is the maximum expire date of copyright? And the third one is, how can we create a social media license like WhatsApp, Facebook, and the like? Thank you.
Thank you, Gigi.
Oh, thank you, Gigi, for your question. So in terms of figuring out how long until the copyright expires, I just know you'd have to look at your country's laws and see how long, you know, in the UAE, it's author's life plus 50 years, which is the minimum for the Berne Convention. But some countries have extended that to 70 years, 100 years. So you'd have to look up the rules in your country. In terms of social media licenses, I'm not sure. Are you talking about applying a Creative Commons license to your social media posts, or can you give me some clarification?
The clinical one to the social media.
Well, I know in terms of Creative Commons licenses, if you have a website, you could post in the website that all the material on your website is under a certain Creative Commons license. But in terms of social media licensing, I'm not quite sure. It's not my area of expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gigi. Okay, so we have run out of time. So I just want to say thank you again, Veronique, for the very informative workshop. If anyone has any other questions for Veronique at any point, as she's mentioned, her email is up on the slide. So you can always reach out to her whenever. Right before we jump off, I just have a couple of concluding slides to share with everyone over from Forum's side. So if you just bear with me one moment to turn that up. Yeah, perfect. So it's 2025, it's a new year. We've also, that therefore means we have a new 2025 program for CDAs. This program is updated on a rolling basis. So whenever we have an event that's confirmed, we always make sure to add it onto our website. And we also send out a notification to our mailing list closer to the time of the event. So if you are interested in keeping up to date with us, do let us know, send us an email, we'll add your email onto our mailing list. But we already have some really cool and interesting events lined up for you. So make sure to check that out. Otherwise, we also have a Slack community channel, if anyone's not aware of that already. The goal of the channel is to bring everybody from our network together in a space where we can really work collaboratively. You can either engage with us through the wider channels, or you can also contact your fellow open science advocates directly on direct message. So we really do encourage you to join our Slack channel, share your updates, share your organization's updates. If you have any events that you think are interesting, we want it to be a very open and collaborative space. So it's not just for forum to talk to you, it's also for you to talk to us. So if you're interested in joining the Slack channel, please just send us an email at contact@forumforopen.org. That's the email at the bottom corner. And then finally, if you do want a certificate of attendance for this event, and most importantly, if you want to help us continue to improve our events and our workshops, let us know what you thought, share some praise for Veronique's very interesting presentation, then please just fill out this very short survey. Sorry, it shouldn't say worksheet, it should say survey. It's a very short survey, it shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes, if that. And once you fill that out, you'll then get a link that will take you to the form you need to fill for your certificate. So we will leave this up for about a minute or two so that everybody can have a chance to scan the QR code. I will also be sending an email to everyone with the details of the survey. In case you missed the QR code, don't worry, just keep an eye out on your inbox. And that way you'll be able to get the certificate of attendance as well. And finally, as for recording and presentation, the recording will probably be out within the next week. And for the presentation slides, once we've confirmed with Veronique how she would prefer for us to circulate it, we will definitely pass it over to you guys as well. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And we will see you next month. Bye.
Thank you.